Hi, my name is M.E.R.N. I am a software engineer at Andela. I am a Cameroonian by origin, and I work here in Nigeria in a company called Andela.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So what is your skill set that you primarily work with on a day-to-day basis?
I use JavaScript, and specifically the M.E.R.N stack.
The MERN
I
stack.
use,
So
yeah,
your Mongo, Express, React, Node.
yes, M.E.R.N and P.E.R.N. Postgres at times. I use Postgres too.
Oh, uh-huh. MERN and PERN.
Yes.
So are you a full-time employee? Do you primarily work on freelance or a bit of both?
Actually, I'm a full-time developer right now, and one of the reasons is because the company I work for, the level at which I have been employed, I still have to go through the training, and the training is being handled by a remote company. So, and the training is pretty much basic. They assume that I'm a beginner, so I have a lot of time during the day to do work on other projects. Like currently, I'm working on a React Native project.
Gotcha, gotcha. So because you've obviously been programming for a while, but they want to start you at the beginning, and it's stuff that a lot of stuff that you already know. You just have a lot of free time. It's where other people would be studying. You can work on side projects or client projects.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about some of your background a little bit. How did you first get introduced to programming? When was the first time you looked at someone writing code or code on a screen and said, "Yeah, I would like to learn how to do that."
All right. My story about getting into programming is really interesting. Funny enough, I learned about programming about a few months after getting into a software engineering school, a computer engineering school actually. So after I had written an entrance exam into not medical school, but engineering school and field. And the engineering I was about to do in that case wasn't specific. It was just I had to go and specialize, but I failed that one. So I was left with no other option than to go to university. So that's how it is. It is with us here in Africa. Most of the cases, universities are usually the last option. So I went to university and I said I was going to study engineering. I had not yet decided what kind of engineering I wanted to do. So when I got there, I had two options, electrical engineering and computer engineering. I chose electrical engineering and I don't have any specific reason why. I just knew I had to go to school. So yeah, usually that's how it is with us here. We usually just stumble our way through education. Now I got into school and we were told to code. We were told that we're going to learn how to code and that coding is some kind of a superpower. They presented it in an enticing way. And once in a while, I would try out some tutorials, watch some tutorials, read some books, do some programming in C. It would get really difficult at one point, and I would go on without coding for months and would only code as much as I needed to do to validate my courses. So it was not until after the second year when some students in my faculty were being selected for the Google Summer of Code, and they were being awarded like $5,000 at the time. So that is when I began to see that this program it's really serious, and I started to code gradually, and I started to learn from those friends of mine who were selected as Google uh, by the scholarship by Google. So from then on, I left after graduating. Before graduating, rather, I applied for an internship which was required, and I performed so well at the internship that they offered me a job. So from there, I just started going higher and higher.
So what was that internship in? What technologies were you working with primarily there?
That time, I was using PHP, the Laravel framework PHP.
And that's what your job was in once they offered you the job?
Yes. They offered me the job, and I actually worked for like 3 months, and then I resigned because the package, the pay was not really. I couldn't survive on what they were offering. It was
Uh-huh.
only a startup, and they were just struggling to get things to work.
Oh, I've
So
been
I,
there.
yeah, so I had to resign.
So you were working with, like you said, a lot of PHP and MySQL. Was that something that you had learned previously in school, or was that something that you sort of had to learn on the job in your internship?
Of course, normally we did some PHP and MySQL in school, but it couldn't help. I couldn't depend on that alone. And like I said earlier, I had been coding. I had been teaching myself how to code around the second year. I didn't depend on the courses provided to me by my professors. They were not coders. They were just academic. They were so into academics that they didn't give us any practical lessons. So they would just go on with theories, and at the end of the day, would not write much code.
So when
So,
you said there wasn't a lot of practical lessons, like what were you learning about?
well, they would just give us.
Was it
When
a
I
lot
say
of
practical,
algorithm analysis, like things
yes,
like very theoretical, like discrete math?
exactly, such things. So we were not given an opportunity to work on, let's say, maybe a blog application, a content management system. They would just give you maybe small snippets of code and ask you what it does and so on. And all of that, you can't just learn how to code with just such small pieces of information about coding.
Right, right. There's a big difference between trying to determine what the output of like some fake algorithm does and then architecting an application that is actually going to be used in the real world. I mean,
Yeah,
there's things like Docker, like DevOps, like hosting, uh, like APIs that you don't really learn in school that you end up using pretty much every day in practice.
yeah, exactly.
So what languages were you working with in school? Were you doing a lot of C, C++? Was it sort of all over the place? I know you said some MySQL and PHP.
Yes, we were doing a little bit of pretty much everything. We started with C, we soon went to Java, we did Python, then we did PHP and MySQL. So, and most of these courses, they just scratched the surface. They didn't go deep into any of these. So we would start Java, and I'll be getting myself invested in Java. I'll begin to like it, and the next thing I know, they just bring the other one C, and I have to abandon Java and continue with C. And that way,
Right,
I couldn't really do much with what I was learning.
right. You have to switch mindsets. Like it takes about a week or so to really get up to speed on a language before you start to like it, because you have to learn
Yeah,
some of the nuances, some of the tricks, the way it looks, the way it feels, how it should be written, and then once you get up to speed on that, and they throw something else at you, you have to totally switch gears, and it can take you out of it, and you have to restart that process.
yeah, that's true, exactly.
So you left school and you went to that internship, and then you went to that job, and then you quit that job. Where did you sort of go from there in terms of programming?
Okay, so while I was doing that internship, I had a brother in Nigeria. The internship was in Cameroon. That's my country. And I had a brother who had gone to school in Nigeria and had a job at Andela in Nigeria. So he explained to me how his company is better for my career. That I would learn a lot. That Andela would like provide a platform for me to work with companies around the world, and not just like startups that were just not following the standards and just trying to make patch things together. So when I resigned the job, I applied at Andela, and the application process is very long, and we had to go through a lot of tests and boot camps and so on. So when I left the internship, I just came to Nigeria and participated in the examination or the selection process, and I got in.
Cool, cool. So I know you have some interesting things going on with your YouTube channel, and I would love to discuss that a little bit. How did you first get into making YouTube videos?
Okay, so getting into YouTube for me wasn't like what most people would think. Most people would sit down, make a plan on what kind of channel they want to create, what kind of videos, what kind of content, what niche they want to specialize in. But for me, it started when I was watching some tutorial videos. When I started learning programming, I was watching some videos on YouTube on how to code, and I wasn't very used to using computers at that time. So when I saw people recording their screens and demonstrating how to create systems, applications, and so on, it filled me with a sense of fascination. And one day I was just surfing the internet and I came upon a software that could record the screen. Before that time, I didn't know there was a software that could record the screen. I thought maybe these guys who record the screen have maybe some privileges with these devices that nobody else can ever have access to. So I installed the software and I wanted to try it out. So I thought, let me just conceive of an idea and record it and see how it goes. So I thought of a login system. So I thought I could create a login system and record the screen and show my users how, and just not actually show users because at that time I didn't think I was going to upload the video yet. So I just recorded the screen, recorded the entire tutorial. There was no voice even in the tutorial. And when I did that, I was so happy with it. And then I was, some days later, I discovered that, well, I could also upload this video on YouTube. Not because I wanted to show off or to make some money out of YouTube or anything like that. It was just like creating a Facebook account and uploading a video, a picture. So I uploaded it, and a few days later, I had a few thousand views, and people started giving me feedback, and they took me serious. They took me serious. They were like saying, "Why did you not hash your password? Why are you using MySQL instead of MySQL, which is more secure?" So when they took me serious, I also took myself serious. So I started creating follow-up videos, making those arrangements, making those adjustments, making the video more secure and uploading it again. And people kept liking it and subscribing. And that's how I just continued. That's how I just continued to get to this point.
So that was several years ago that you started doing that, and you focused mostly on PHP MySQL, right?
Yes.
So what sorts of other tutorials have you done besides like logins and things like that?
I have done a design tutorial on how to create an entire blog, and I have done tutorials like and dislike systems, comments and reply systems, and what else? Like how to share articles on Twitter, and like JavaScript validation and such things. And most of the ideas I wanted to get out there, I haven't gotten them out there. Most of the kind of tutorials I wanted to create, I haven't created them because I was doing it without sound. So I couldn't just do anything too complex. Otherwise, my users will not be able to understand.
Right. So you're just writing code and they're following your mouse around as you click and type things and things like that.
Yes, exactly.
So what's your favorite video that you've made so far?
Well, my favorite video is the series on how to create a blog application, because I did it in CSS without using any framework, and the design is, I can say the design is, I can put it on production. It is good enough to even go on production. It is mobile responsive, and I haven't ever had the chance to sit down and learn CSS. Since I'm learning only CSS, so this tutorial, and the fact that I also recorded it with voice, so it wasn't really easy. It's a series of maybe 13 videos or so, and recording it wasn't, it's probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in programming. Well, yeah, so I'm really proud of the videos.
So is that series, are you done with that series, or do you have more videos planned for that?
No, the series, I have just one video left on the series, which is how to design the admin section of the blog. And the series is still to be continued. I'm still to make it interactive, to integrate a database, and use PHP code to actually make it like a real website, and even host it on Heroku. So that's my plan on the series.
So where do you see your channel going from here? Do you have any other types of series planned? Do you have other types of content planned besides tutorials? I mean, the tutorials seem to be working quite well for you.
For the moment, I am just trying to get myself very comfortable with the camera, and to be more eloquent and to know how to communicate well and clearly. And for the foreseeable future, maybe a year, like in a year's time, I will just be creating tutorials. And then after that, I would have had enough experience to create videos like guiding, like consulting videos, not just coding videos, like provide like ideas on how to develop your skills as a developer, how to be more productive, and then to share my lifestyle, my experience with working with technologies and so on.
That's really cool. So we'll drop a link to your channel in the description here, but just so everyone can hear it, what is the name of your channel?
The name is actually my name, M.E.R.N.
Easy enough. Easy enough.
Yeah.
And like I said, we'll drop a link in the description here.
Right.
So let's sort of move on to some more technical topics. I know a lot of your early professional experience was in PHP MySQL, and you've since moved into more of the JavaScript M.E.R.N stack world. What was the thinking around that transition, and how has that sort of affected your?
Excuse me.
Oh, good.
The internet connection disturbed. I haven't heard what you said in the last 5 seconds or so. You say what
Okay.
was?
So I said I know your early professional programming was in a lot of PHP, MySQL, but you've since moved into more of the M.E.R.N stack JavaScript world. And I was wondering sort of what prompted that transition in tech stacks.
Okay. The first thing is my brother has been in the tech industry a bit longer than I have been, and he had already noticed how the JavaScript is the next big thing. JavaScript was trending. It was the most popular programming language in the world, and he advised me to transition to learn JavaScript. That was just one of the reasons. The other reasons is that I wanted to quit my previous job and join Andela. And the entire application process into Andela, the interviews and the boot camps and everything, every step in the application process they were using JavaScript. So if I wanted to get into Andela, I had to learn JavaScript. I had to prepare myself for the interviews and the boot camps and everything in JavaScript. So, and then another thing is PHP. PHP is a very controversial language, and most people like to say it's not really good. And somehow I share in their point of view. I'm not very passionate. I don't really like PHP that much. So going into JavaScript, all these reasons is why I decided to move into JavaScript. And also
So
because I wanted to be developing mobile applications in JavaScript.
so that's how you got into things like React Native.
Yes, yes, yes.
So why don't you like PHP? What don't you like about it?
Well, PHP, I don't think it's very secure, and it doesn't have much structure except when you're using the maybe an MVC framework like Laravel.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, PHP is not very fast. It's not as fast as languages like Node.js and so on. Sorry, like Express, like JavaScript, yeah, JavaScript. So that's why I chose to let go of PHP.
So most of your programming efforts since you switched over have been in React, right?
Yes, React and even vanilla JavaScript because the bootcamp was done in vanilla JavaScript. They
Uh-huh.
believe that in order to do React, you have to know how it works under the hood. So
Uh-huh.
everything is done in JavaScript.
Right.
So yeah.
So what was the biggest difference that you noticed in creating websites in like PHP versus React? Like what in terms of how you think about programming, how you think about attacking a problem?
Okay. The first thing was like the performance. And JavaScript, I just saw clearly the difference in the performance of the JavaScript applications. It was better than PHP applications, and mm,
So
excuse me.
you want to talk about some of the high level things in React? Like what problem is React really solving? Like what is the reason that React even exists? Why use React as over just HTML, CSS, vanilla JavaScript?
Okay, so React is a library. It's a library, a UI library, a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And before React, using vanilla JavaScript, for example, you have to use things like selectors, event listeners on the document, on the DOM, and it is not very performant and it is prone to mistakes, and you have to do a lot of repetitive coding. And things like, let's say, to add an event listener to an object, to an element. Some elements get displayed dynamically. So you get faced with the situation where, do you attach an event listener to the element that is being displayed dynamically, or do you select it with JavaScript? Do you select it and then use that element in your JavaScript to perform to add the event listener? So things like that made it very difficult to work with just vanilla JavaScript. So React came in to ease this problem. First of all, the performance issue. The way works is when it renders an interface, it keeps something called a virtual DOM of that interface. And when any change is being made in the state of the application, React does a comparison between the virtual DOM and the DOM that is actually rendered on the browser, and it only updates that difference between the two. So for example, if a user has updated the cat, it just React will just notice that there's a difference between the virtual DOM, the cat items on the virtual DOM and the actual ones on the screen. So it just updates that part, and that makes it very performant. And
Right.
React is
I think that was a great way to describe it. That's the advantage of having something that's very much component based, is you only have to update the components that actually change.
yes, yes, exactly.
So I didn't mean to cut you off there. What were you were about to continue with something?
Okay, I was about to say, and with React, your JavaScript and your HTML, in this case XML actually, is in the same place, it's in the same location, it's in your components. So your event listeners and everything is in one place. And with React, you can create components that you will reuse throughout your application, unlike in vanilla JavaScript when there is usually a lot of repetition of code. So React makes the actual development very, very easy in addition to the performance.
Because it's everything is very reusable.
Yes, yes.
So tell me about components. How do they work? What are their life cycles? How do you actually use a component?
Okay. So a component is a like the name implies, a component of one application. So it usually has a life cycle ranging from the time before it is rendered on the screen to the time when it is being unmounted. And components, the data and components communicate with with each other using the props and even the state, the data in the state also is used to update the component and so on. Now there are certain activities, there are certain functionalities we want to keep into play at several points in this life cycle of the components, like when the components will mount. There's a time before it mounts. The time after, when it has mounted, there are certain things want to happen on the component when it has mounted. And when it is about to receive props, there are some things that need to occur that you might want to have happen when the component is about to receive new props, and then component will unmount. So for example, React in particular, when you're about to do an API call, like to get data to display in that component, React recommends that you do that in the component did mount function, in the component did mount lifecycle. And let's say you have had some data in your components, and you want to you have already rendered the component and it is about to receive new props, and you want to update the component according to the new props that are coming in. You can do that in the component to receive props lifecycle. And let's say you have some cleaning up to do when a component has finished rendering, and when it has finished rendering and it's about to be unmounted, you can do that in a component. Components will unmount lifecycle method. And there's another one also called component will mount. Just before the component is about to mount, do you have maybe some event listeners or some things like that that you want to set? You can use that method also. So that's a bit I can say on that.
So you want to actually open up a code editor, and we'll talk about some of this stuff in code.
Okay, sure, I'll do that. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes. I can
Okay.
see Visual Studio.
All right. This is actually the React Native app I have been working on. And well, this is a new machine, so I don't yet have my React. Most of my React applications here. I might have to clone that, but for now, let me just demonstrate what I was saying in this React Native application.
So before we get into that, can you give some context as to what this application is actually doing here?
Okay, so yeah, this application is a food ordering application where you can order your food stuff on the application. I don't know if you can see the interface.
Yes.
All right, so basically you select your location and you select your area, and then you can order your food online. You can search for food in categories. You order it, you add to cart. You can increment or decrement the number of items in your cart, and then you proceed to checkout. So before you check out, you have to log in first. So you provide your address and you just put any phone number.
So what location APIs are you using right there? What location services?
I have not yet implemented the location part yet.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just putting a list of the locations that the restaurants are available. But the other feature, one of the last features left on this application is actually to implement a use my location button here, where the user can actually just select their location and determine if they have any nearby restaurants that can deliver to them at that location.
So
And
do
I'm
you,
going to,
yeah, what are
I'm
you
going
going to
to,
use that?
yes, I'm going to use React Native, a package called React Native geocoding, and it's going to use Google's Google Map features where you can convert longitudes and latitudes into an actual address, uh, and vice versa. So that's the library I'm going to use in this case.
And then have you implemented the payment stuff yet, or do you have plans to implement that?
I've implemented it already, even though now it's only the test payments,
Uh-huh.
and I've
What are you
used.
using for that?
I'm using Paystack actually. I don't know if you know about Paystack. I think it's a bit local to our area, and I had a lot of challenges implementing it because the community online is not very big.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I used it is because the app is just a local application.
Right.
So I've just made a payment. I can check my Gmail address for the receipt. Okay, so this is the payment receipt I just received. So it is just a test payment. When we are done, we are going to integrate the real thing.
Cool. So let's I appreciate that overview. Let's look at some of the code here. Anything any components, any render methods you wanna talk about?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me just get to the start screen. Just a minute. Okay, like for this example, the application actually has a Node.js backend, so I'm actually consuming the backend. Now this is a restaurant page where the naming is not very descriptive. It's not very descriptive because this component it displays the form for the user to select their location and their area. So I should have given it a better name. Now this is one of the component lifecycle methods, the component mount methods, and like I said earlier, this is the appropriate place to do like API calls to fetch data.
Uh-huh.
So I am using Redux. So this is an action that will actually fetch the outlets, and the outlet is like a restaurant. So it's going to fetch all of them, and then after I fetched all outlets, I'll then set the spinner to false. Normally, I was going to uncomment this, but I thought of removing the spinner later on. That's the loader. And then on the interface, we saw some select buttons. These two buttons. So these are the event listeners. When the user clicks on the location button, I'm going to pick that particular location and fire an action, a Redux action with that location. And when I do that, I'll be taken to this page. I'll be taken to this page, and I can select the location that I want. Then I can also select the area, because all the areas, the locations have different areas under them. So I can also select the area under a particular location, and I'll be sent to a page where I'll have all the available restaurants in that area. And then I was talking about the other component lifecycle methods. In this case, I want the application to go back to the previous page when the user clicks on the Android back button. So I am using the back handler, which is a component in the React Native. So before the component mounts, it adds an event listener to the back button, to the Android back button. And when the component is about to unmount, I will also remove the event listener to clear up my memory. And this is the function. This is the back button handler. When the user clicks on the back button, I want to navigate back to the previous page on the Stack Navigator. So that's pretty much it. And what I really initially planned on showing in this was a JavaScript application I built during the bootcamp.
Yeah, let's take a look.
All right. So it's actually a full stack application, and we developed it using the least technologies possible. We're not allowed to use any frameworks or libraries.
All of your apps seem to be food-based.
Pardon?
All of your apps seem to be food-based.
I didn't get you. You're saying? Are you getting me?
Excuse me?
Are you getting me?
Said,
are you getting me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So this is the application I built during my bootcamp. The application, I've already hosted the application. This is the interface, but most of the work wasn't done on the interface. A huge chunk of the work is not on the interface. It's on the back end, and so I would want to just give you a quick run through the back end.
Yeah, for sure.
First of all, we are told to test all our applications, to integrate test coverage with coveralls and code climate. So this is the root folder. This is the develop branch, the most updated code base. And this folder API holds the back end of my application. This is the entry point. And I have all my routes inside the router file, which I'm importing from the routes folder. Now, the interesting thing here is the models, because we were asked to use data structures to create our models initially before even integrating the database. So I had to create a class for each of the models and to initialize all the attributes of that model in a constructor. And then we asked to use just raw SQL statements to perform our database queries. So in each of the model classes, I defined the necessary methods, the save method, the update method, and the find method. And I tried to adapt it to look like what we have in MongoDB. So if you can find and pass a query, an object, and I'll use that object to build a query and then query the database with that query. And whenever I return anything from the database, if it is one object that I'm returning, I usually return an instance so that I can use these other methods on that instance.
Right.
Yeah. And so we also have our tests. We used Mocha and Kai to write our tests. And if you noticed it on the homepage of my application, my tests were failing. And that,
It's
yeah,
big.
that's just, it's just one issue I had left undone on the application. Okay, so if I run npm run test, it actually creates the test tables, the ones that are needed for the test. And I do this using a migration files. So these are my tests. Just one of the tests is failing. And the reason it is failing is because I was kind of confused. Inside my test files, I was expecting a 204 when you delete a food item. And on the endpoint, I was sending a 200. So to resolve this, I just had to change this 200 to 204.
Oh, it's just a
And
status thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the great thing about this application is all of what I just showed you was done in 2 weeks time. So it was very heavy work. So it's one of the proudest work I've done so far. Of course, right now I have grown from that time. I can do better than this. But I did this as a beginner JavaScript developer, and I did it in 2 weeks. So
it's pretty good. That's a lot of code for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. So, is there any other project you wanna look at, or do you wanna dive into some of these final questions here and get this wrapped up? I thought those were both really interesting, and that you did a nice job walking through both of them.
All right, thank you. Actually, I don't think I have a project to show now.
Cool. So let's just, if you could stop sharing your screen and just hop back into normal view.
Okay, let me do that.
Was that an Xcode project I just saw?
Yes. The app I'm developing is for iOS and Android, actually.
Yeah. You got all sorts of code editors open.
Yeah, so actually before the call, I had been working on the app. I'm really running out of time, so I'm using every opportunity I have. Like the entire weekend is dedicated to working on the app.
So let's dive into some final questions here. So looking back on what you've learned about programming since you started, like what would you tell yourself as a beginner? What bits of advice, what tips would you tell yourself sort of on day one?
Well, I would tell myself not to stop, to code every day, to do everything in my power to code every day, because when we started university, our professors stood in front of our class one day and told us, everything you learn in this engineering school, you are going to use only about 10% or so of whatever you learn. So when I heard that comment that day, he did not provide context. He did not tell us that you are going to have to teach yourself how to code and so on. He just threw that at us. And I didn't know much. So the entire time I was just discouraged. I didn't want to learn something that I will not use in my career. So I was discouraged so I wasted about a year or so not coding until I was really introduced to like Google Summer of Code and other ideas and other ways in which I could really succeed in my career if I did code. So I would tell myself not to stop coding for whatever reason. Even if I wasn't seeing the results at the time, I should not stop.
So what platform, language, or technology that you currently don't know would you most like to learn in the future?
That would be game development.
Development.
Yeah. I look forward to it. I really want to learn how to create like games, especially for mobile applications. Yeah.
So are there any specific technologies that you want to work with? I know you just mentioned mobile, but anything in particular?
No, I don't have any. I haven't yet done research on that actually. So right now it's a bit of, it's just a dream, but I really want to.
So why games?
Well, because it is fun. It is fun, and almost everybody can play games. So I like to develop things that a lot of people use and have fun.
So what was your most, I guess, negative programming experience or interview? And then on the flip side, most positive programming experience or interview?
Okay, so the negative and the positive, both of them have to do with job interviews. When I quit my first job, I came to Nigeria to look for a job. So I was just applying anywhere. And there is this day I applied and I was scheduled for an interview, a remote interview like this one. And I prepared a lot in that interview. I had a lot of notes, I had a lot of material. And when it was time for the call, before that time, I had never really had a remote call like this one. So on the call, I just froze. I couldn't speak. I could barely speak. So it was really awkward. And the employer, the potential employer, just told me that he was going to get back to me if he found me like qualified among the other participants. And I would have been surprised if he really got back to me because my performance was really awful. Then now the positive one, just a few weeks after that encounter, I really taught myself. I really developed myself. I learned how to speak more clearly, and then I studied a lot of the concepts about programming that I knew. And one of the job I had applied for, they called me for an interview, an on-site interview. And I went there and I actually participated in the interview, and they were so impressed that they told me they were going to get back to me. I was still in my bus getting home when they sent me an email and said my interview was successful. And they were expecting me to come back to the office as soon as possible to resume work. And I went back there. We had the discussions about how my work program is going to be, and they told me about the pay, and I wasn't okay with it. I named my own price, and they were arguing, we were bargaining. I found myself bargaining on the price when initially I just wanted a job, no matter the pay. So I finally had to drop it because the Andela option, which was my primary goal, it turns out well later on. So the other people kept coming after me and like begging me to reconsider their offer. So I was really happy.
Nice. So if you could relay one message about programming to people that are non-technical, what would that be?
Okay, I'll just tell them that it's not as easy as it seems, because that's currently a difficult situation I'm in now. The person who gave me this application to build, he will just give me feedback like, make this thing do like this, let this page appear before this one, do this, do that. And to him, it looks simple, but he doesn't know the amount of work that goes into making that interface or making the application function as he is asking. And right now, the amount of money that I've been paid for the job, I don't think it's not even enough to pay for the effort and for the cost of actually building the application, because the work is really very much. Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of cosmetic stuff that happens on the surface, but then there's a lot of infrastructure stuff that happens underneath. It's sort of like the classic picture of the iceberg where only 10% of it is poking out of the water, and then the other 90% of it is underneath. But people that don't know about programming, they only see the 10% that sits on the surface.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
So on the flip side of that question, if you could relay any message to programmers, what would that be? Let's say you had a big billboard and that you put up on the side of the road, and 1 million programmers drove by in their cars every single day, and they all saw that billboard. What would it say? What would your message be?
My message, I can just say it in one word: contribute. Just contribute. Contribute, yes.
What prompts that word?
Well, because there are times I go online, I beat myself on a bug or something like that on an issue for hours and hours, and the feeling I get when I stumble on it online, when I've gone through the GitHub issues, the Stack Overflow answers, and when I finally stumble on the answer on the solution, it's the best feeling in the world. So when you're online, when you have a solution, when you see a question to a solution, if you see a question and you have with a solution, please just spare a moment and drop it there. It's going to help a lot of people. If you are able to also contribute to open source and yeah.
I think that's a great answer, and I think you've gone above and beyond with sort of your YouTube channels. I mean, that's contributing to sort of the next level.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Awa. That was